Yeah, welcome to game day. Welcome to Four Nations Fever. Four Nations Fever is hit, no doubt. Look at him, though. Yeah, no doubt sweating from what was a raucous week. Marco D'Amico from RG Media, rg.org, back with us on a brand new week where we've ridden the roller coaster of emotions with Team Canada and Mario Lemieux in the tournament opener against Sweden on Wednesday, to Canada and the United States and what happened in what was a wild Saturday night at the Bell Center. And Marco D'Amico covered it like a blanket. And here he is to talk to us about this and a whole bunch of other stuff. Marco, what's up, brother?
I'm still trying to come back to earth from what we just witnessed.
So listen,
Just
let me take you down memory lane for a second. And as always, let's be honest, as we always are here. I thought this was going to be a glorified all-star game tournament. I felt like I was force-fed. Here, it's not an all-star game. It's not an all-star game. And then Wednesday happened. And then Thursday happened. And then Saturday happened. I mean, I was 180 degrees removed from the truth for what I thought was going to happen. Why has the Four Nations been so outstanding? Before we get into the details, what is it, Marco? I mean, you've been in the building for these games. What's made this so magical?
it's a couple of things. I think the first one is how starved these players were for best on best. I think you can claim a lot of things. You could say a lot of things about it. I think everyone just assumed that because the NHL was the one organizing this, that it felt
Right.
like an all-star game or that the stakes weren't high enough. I think everyone grossly underestimated the pride of these players and the hunger that they had to be or to play a true best on best style tournament. And, you look at the age groups of a lot of these teams, for a lot of these players, it's the first time ever. Like Brady Kachuk full on said, there's kind of a nod to the tournament, but also kind of a self diss where he said that Saturday night's game was the biggest game of his career. And he's not wrong. He's never made the playoffs. So it's kind of like what else did he have? And I really I'd say maybe the biggest game of his career prior to that would have been the outdoor game at the World Junior Championships, right?
Right.
In his draft year. So I believe 2018 tournament, like that would have been it. So for them, it was such a grandiose moment. Um, each single game, but not even just like the North American players, even the European players, like Sweden just absolutely like checked in to this tournament right off the bat. Finland, seen as like the perpetual underdogs, were like ready to prove the world wrong. So it's a stage. And I think people don't afford the importance that a stage brings to an athlete at this level. And
Hmm.
I think that's the thing. They thought, you'd think that it's going to be like a world championship. The world championships do not have the best players in the NHL because more often than not, those players are in the playoffs. So it ends up being kind of somewhat, but this is the first time outside of selection, questionable selections. This is the first time that you get true best on best
Yeah.
since what, the 2014 Olympics. So
Exactly.
you look at these players, and I'm going to start naming names, right? Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, although he was sick, Shea Theodore, although he's injured. You look, I mean, you can keep going down that list. The only player, the only two players that were on the team in 2014 that come off the top of my head are Sidney Crosby and Drew Doughty.
Right. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
entire team has never seen best on best, true best on
So
best.
with
Or
Canada
Brad Marchand
having
as well. I apologize.
yeah, that was I was just about to say Brad Marchand. Um, but with Canada now on this game day, Canada and Finland at 1 o'clock on Monday from Boston. And Canada wins in regulation. They'll meet the Americans in the ultimate revenge game on Thursday for the Four Nations Championship.
Yeah,
Um, what's
yeah.
made the USA with 6 points leading the field here? What's made them better than everybody else? What's the separation?
Well, if you really want to analyze the game, there's two ways of looking at this. And again, like I don't want to. I'm like this is my personal opinion. This is the way I see it, the way that it's built. Everybody can have a different view on it, but they're a far more physical team. They're a punishing team. They're playing playoff hockey,
Hmm.
and other teams just don't have an answer for that. Like Connor McDavid got absolutely flatlined by Charlie McAvoy,
Twice.
and like there is no response for that. Like it's
No.
just incredible. And like you can the fighting aside, right? Like obviously we're going to talk on that, but
Yep.
we're talking just like hockey plays. The United States boxed them out so good that they couldn't get into the slot. And when they could, you had to beat Connor Hellebuck. And we were talking about this last week. The
Hmm.
United States trumps the entire tournament in one key category, and that is goaltending. Because Connor Hellebuck is a wall. But then you also have to deal with Jeremy Swayman, or if I believe Jake Ottinger as well. So
Correct.
every single one of these guys could be the number one goalie for Canada right now, and they would have probably have done a better job than Jordan Binnington, right? So when you are limiting Sidney Crosby, although injured, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon to one
Yep.
goal on
Yep.
20 plus shots, like that is just Connor Hellebuck. But just to get to Connor Hellebuck was a trench war. And that is what they do that Canada did not do. And that's why they're going to. I said it last week and I'll say it again. They're playing clear Mike Sullivan hockey, 1-2-2 defensive punch. And it's almost impossible to penetrate the middle of the ice that way. They block cross ice passes. They're playing very aggressive, boxing out the Canadian or Finnish players to the outside. We'll see what they do with Sweden. I think they may try to take it easy just to make it to the final healthy.
Yep.
But the way that they're playing is so sound, and they pick the right players for the right roles to play that kind of style of game. Like to me, the player on the American roster that I haven't really seen is Jack Hughes,
Sure.
right? And I've paid way more attention to like a Brock Nelson, for example, in that kind of a situation. You're looking at what they could have done differently, and when you think, oh well, the Cole Caulfield could have been there, Logan Thompson could have been there. I don't think they would have fit this style.
Yeah, they're
Right?
good. Like you barely even. There's another one, like Kyle Connor too, right? I mean, you saw him bits and spurts. Jack Eichel with the Kachuk brothers has been
Well,
a revelation.
yeah,
It's
Jack
crazy.
Eichel is, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
I can't tell you how um appreciative of Jack Eichel Mike Sullivan was the last two press conferences, and how he is just a plug and play
So good.
like elite center, and you could put him with anybody, but you literally put him with the Bash brothers, and all of a sudden he becomes Kenny Wu on the ice and starts getting physical himself, and it's just infectious. And I think that
Yeah.
identity is what makes the United States the team to beat. And obviously I know most of our listeners are Canadian, and I really like this isn't about I like we're just analyzing teams here, but you have to give them credit. They went and got the best
Yeah.
players. They didn't look at the last five Stanley Cup winning teams and go, let me just take all the Canadians on your roster. They built a team based on a set identity, and they took the best players in those roles, and that's why they have success.
So then the counter punches, because you answered a few questions within that answer, right?
Yeah,
About how did the Americans, what upper hand did they have, right? It was very deliberate, it was very strategic, and I love what you're saying about
their
building a
defense just
building a team,
incredible.
building a
Yeah,
team, right? And so Canada goes ultimately with exceptional skill littered throughout their lineup, and John Cooper leans on the guys he knows more often than not. Do you think Canada learned from the way the Americans built up their roster for this tournament? And by that, I mean, there were so many comments when I did my live show on Sunday morning in the
mm,
aftermath of the Americans
yeah,
coming to Montreal and beating the Team Canada 3-1. The amount of people, Marco, that were like, Tom Wilson, Mark Scheifele, Tom Wilson, Mark Scheifele, more or less, fans on average want this team to obviously have exceptional skill while also
mhm.
rounding it out. One of the comments that stayed with me, and I'm curious to get your reaction to this: build a hockey team, not an all-star team. What's your reaction to that comment from a disgruntled Team Canada supporter that didn't enjoy watching his team lose some fights and lose a hockey game. Is there any merit to that comment?
They, why would Brandon Hagel and Anthony Cirelli and Sam Bennett be there if they weren't trying to build a hockey team and bring an all-star team to the like? And this is the thing. I don't think it's a question of building an all-star team versus a hockey team. I just think they played favorites again, as they
Gotcha.
did with the World Junior Championship roster, as they constantly do at Hockey Canada. They just play to the guys they know. Sam Bennett would not be on any Canadian roster. Like if you were to simulate this, there's no way that Sam Bennett would be on any simulatory roster for Team Canada ahead of Mark Scheifele if you were to just try,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
There is no way. But it's because recency bias and the fact that they've proven winners. And, whenever we do, and we will get into trade talk, but whenever you hear the trope of, well, he's got Stanley Cup experience, that's real amongst NHL general managers. And you see it with the selection of this roster, right? Like, as much as I appreciate a guy like Bennett, or for example, Sam Reinhart, for just to name a guy. Sam Reinhart's, like a good hockey player, but I think he's elevated when he plays with a guy like Sasha Barkov. And so when you come to play with Canada and you're not playing with that,
Right.
elite two-way center, very much not an effective player. And to me, he's been, Sam Bennett, he's only played a game. But to me, Sam Reinhart is probably the biggest disappointment in that top nine for me personally, watching him play, because just no effect whatsoever. And I look at the players that could have been available, and you think to yourself, you know, this is a prep for the Olympics. If a Sam Bennett or a Sam Reinhart are on Team Canada for the Olympics after this showing,
Yeah.
then Hockey Canada is going to need more than a director of excellence to fix this issue, because this becomes, like, you
Right.
can make the argument. Would a game like yesterday, where you need goals, or sorry, a game like Saturday where you need goals, who could help you more? Sam Bennett, who has like 6 points in his last 20 games or something?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing, and we'll get into that after. But I think the NHL is going to learn from this, where they're going to bring in 25 guys instead of a 23-man roster, so that you could have more options in situations like this and give more players exposure. But you
Sure.
look at a guy like Mark Scheifele, who's the leading goal scorer amongst Canadians. That would have been fun to have in that situation. A guy like Nick Suzuki, who can play hard and has gone deep in the playoffs already at a young age. You know, that's a guy that could have helped here too. Tom
No doubt.
Wilson
No doubt.
is
Yeah.
outscoring most of the guys on this roster. Could have helped too. But again, like, to me, when you looked at this roster, the issue I have is on defense. And the reason being is Team Canada had all the offensive power in the world. They had no transition game. I've never seen, you talk about an all-star team that they built. An all-star team doesn't dump the puck to the
Oh,
degree that Canada did yesterday, because
correct.
they had no transition game. You have
Yep.
Colton Parayko, you, you like
100%.
Devon Taves, you have Drew Doughty. None of these guys are elite puck movers, because Cale Makar is injured and Shea Theodore is injured. So all they had was poor Josh Morrissey, and Team USA obviously saw that whenever he had
Right.
the puck, they had two guys on him.
And
So
the
they were
forwards couldn't
forced to
do
dump
anything
and chase.
either.
Well, the
McDavid couldn't
forwards,
drive. They kept deferring back to the point. The second period was a statement period by the Americans on Saturday.
yes, and that's the point I'm trying to say. So they didn't have the proper mix of players. They got cute with it, just like the Canadians got cute with their passing game last night or Saturday night. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, like I said, it's there. They didn't build a team that could have been cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
They built a team on, like, in my opinion, when you look at it, they built a team based on favorites. And unfortunately, those tend to backfire. USA has an elite hockey program, and they still went and got guys that didn't necessarily go through that program.
Yeah. 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 Well said. Well said. The Four Nations Faceoff wraps up Thursday this week from Boston. The Americans punched their ticket. If you're watching this on Monday, It's Canada and Finland this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And Canada wins in regulation. It will be the ultimate revenge game on Thursday in Boston at 8 o'clock for all
Oh,
of Four Nations hockey glory.
you could book it right now. Just seeing the emotion on
Yeah,
Sidney Crosby's face in the Canadiens
yeah,
dressing room
yeah.
was insane.
Hey,
Like
hey,
the
let me ask you this question here. Let me ask you this question. Who starts? Who starts in goal Monday
not
afternoon?
Jordan Bennington.
I agree. I agree. So it's eight. I mean, I go Aiden
It,
Hill
it has to
personally.
be Aiden Hill.
It's got to be.
It's
And like, I don't
unfortunate.
disagree. Like,
I
go
know
ahead. Yeah,
Canadians fans are going to be upset with this. Sam Montembeault is not touching the ice. Unfortunately, he may be
yeah.
brought in as the backup, or if they don't want to offend Bennington, they may make Bennington the backup. But I think it's Aiden Hill versus. I think it's
Hill.
Aiden Hill the rest of the way. It
Yeah,
should
yeah.
be Aiden Hill the rest of the way because, again,
Agreed.
if you look at every single advanced stat of last night's game, Canada should have easily won. But goaltending was one of the reasons they lost,
Yes.
and it was another reason why they lost, both against them and on their own team.
Well,
And
listen.
so
I mean, they made two mistakes. The Gensel goal to me was kind of soft, and Sidney Crosby with a bad
no,
pass and the
that
turnover, and it's
Larkin
in the back
shot,
of the net.
that Larkin shot is inexcusable. A goalie coach was sitting right next to me upstairs, and Jeremy Swayman for that matter,
Oh
and
yeah,
both were like,
for sure. For
you
sure.
talk about it and you're like, if a guy's coming down the rush like that, your defenseman's got the other dude going on the 2-on-1. It's your job to come out of your circle and challenge. And I don't think he was aggressive enough,
Yeah.
which is hilarious because he was over aggressive on every other play, but that one. And so I know we could sit here and nitpick, but the other end of the spectrum here is you're not going to win a game by scoring one goal. So
100%.
as much as
100%.
everyone is going to say Jordan Bennington is not the goalie, yes, I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I think that the Canadian offense is going to have to bring it up one, two, maybe three notches because
100%.
they're not going to win 1-0 games.